The wheat stalks crunched under Thomas Reed's boots as he walked through his morning field inspection. Something had been bothering his livestock all night, and the automated harvest drones kept sending error signals from the back 40 acres. At 53, Thomas had seen enough strange things on the frontier colony of New Eden to know when something wasn't right. The sun hung low over the golden fields, casting long shadows across the farmland his grandfather had first settled 3 generations ago. Thomas carried his grandfather's old rifle more out of habit than necessity. The wildlife on New Eden was mostly harmless, and the planet had been peaceful for decades. As he crested the small hill that marked the boundary of his property, Thomas stopped dead in his tracks. Where his prize wheat field should have been, a massive crater scarred the earth. The crater was perfectly circular, about 200 feet across, with edges that looked melted rather than blown apart. Steam rose from the center, and the air shimmered with heat waves despite the cool morning temperature. Thomas approached carefully, his farmer's instincts telling him this was no meteorite impact. The wheat around the crater hadn't been burned or scattered. Instead, it lay flattened in perfect spirals, as if some invisible force had pressed it down in geometric patterns. The soil at the crater's edge had turned into a glass-like substance that reflected the morning light in strange colors. At the bottom of the crater lay something that made Thomas question his sanity. It was enormous, easily the size of his barn, covered in what looked like scales that shifted color from deep purple to silver as they caught the light. The creature had 4 limbs, each ending in claws that could have torn through his farmhouse, like paper. Its head was long and elegant, with closed eyes the size of dinner plates. Wings, torn and bleeding, were folded against its sides. Thomas had grown up on stories of ancient Earth legends, but this looked exactly like the dragons from those old tales, except this was real, breathing slowly and very much alive. As Thomas stared in shock, the creature's massive eye opened. It was the color of a dying star, swirling with depths that seemed to hold entire galaxies. The eye focused on Thomas, and suddenly a voice filled his head, speaking directly into his thoughts. Human. The voice was ancient beyond measure, carrying weight of eons and a sadness so deep it made Thomas's chest ache. I sense your fear, small one, but please do not flee. I have traveled far to find one of your kind. Thomas's hand shook as he gripped his rifle tighter. The weapon felt pathetically small compared to the massive being before him. What are you? He managed to whisper. I am Morden of the Stellar Drakes, last of my kind. I have fallen from the void between stars, and I am dying. The great head lifted slightly, and Thomas could see wounds along the creature's neck that pulsed with an unnatural black substance. But death will not come easily to one such as I. That is why I sought your world, human. Your species alone possesses the gift I require. Gift? Thomas took a step backward. I don't understand. Among all the species that populate this galaxy, only humans can grant true death to beings like myself. Your kind calls it the death touch, though you do not understand its significance. Morden's voice grew weaker. For 10,000 years, I have ruled systems of stars. I have seen civilizations rise and fall like waves upon a shore. I am immortal, as are all stellar drakes. But immortality has become my curse. Thomas looked more closely at the creature's wounds. The black substance wasn't blood, but something that moved with its own life, writhing and spreading slowly across the dragon's scales. What happened to you? I carry within me quantum parasites, a weapon created by the Hegemony Empire. They feed on my life force but cannot kill me. Instead, they ensure I suffer eternal agony while they slowly drain my power. Morden's great eye closed in pain. I have endured this torment for decades, seeking a way to end my existence. Only a human can break the chains that bind me to this cursed immortality. Thomas felt sick to his stomach. The creature's pain was real, transmitted directly into his mind through their strange connection. I'm just a farmer. I don't know anything about killing dragons or whatever you are. You need not know. The ability lies within your very nature. When a human takes the life of a stellar drake with intent and purpose, our immortal essence is severed permanently. No other species in the galaxy possesses this power. Many fear humans for this reason, though your kind remains ignorant of why. Morning wind picked up and Thomas smelled something strange in the air, like ozone mixed with spices he couldn't identify. How do you know about humans? How did you find Earth? Your world's location has been known to the galactic community for some time. Most species avoid this sector precisely because humanity dwells here. But I needed to find you. Morden's massive form shuddered. Please, human. I have suffered long enough. Grant me the peace that only your kind can provide. Thomas stared at the wounded dragon, his mind reeling. Everything he thought he knew about the universe had just crumbled. Humanity wasn't alone, and apparently, they were feared across the galaxy for reasons they didn't even understand. The rifle in his hands suddenly felt heavier, as if it carried the weight of cosmic responsibility. I can't just kill you, Thomas said finally. Even if you're suffering, even if you're asking me to, it's not right. Something like surprise flickered in Morden's ancient eye. In my millennia of existence, no species has ever refused a stellar Drake's request out of conscience. Your kind truly is unique. The sun climbed higher and Thomas realized he had a choice to make. The creature before him was in agony, begging for death, and apparently only a human could provide it. But every instinct in his body rebelled against the idea of murder, even mercy killing of an alien being. There has to be another way, Thomas said, shouldering his rifle. Maybe I can help you heal instead. For the first time since their conversation began, Morden's mental voice carried a note of something other than despair. It might have been hope, though the dragon seemed too ancient to remember what that felt like. The morning air grew colder as clouds gathered overhead, and Thomas Reed, simple wheat farmer, took his first step into a larger universe. 3 days had passed since Thomas discovered the dragon in his field. He had called in sick to the local agricultural council, telling them his harvester had broken down and he needed time to repair it. The lie sat heavily on his conscience, but not as heavily as the massive alien creature hidden in his crater. Thomas had spent those days running back and forth from his farmhouse to the crater, bringing water in his largest containers and whatever medical supplies he could find. The quantum parasites covering Morden's wounds recoiled from fresh water, though they didn't disappear completely. The dragon seemed stronger when hydrated, though he still winced with pain whenever the black substance pulsed across his scales. You are a puzzle to me, human, Morden said as Thomas carefully cleaned around one of the larger wounds with a cloth soaked in antiseptic. In 10,000 years, I have encountered thousands of species. All sought to use stellar drakes for their own purposes. Some worshipped us as gods. Others hunted us for our power. None ever tended our wounds without expecting something in return. Thomas squeezed out the cloth in a metal bucket, the water turning dark with alien blood and the residue of the parasites. My grandmother used to take care of injured animals. She taught me that suffering is suffering no matter what shape it comes in. Your grandmother was wise, though I suspect she never imagined you would apply her teachings to a creature from the void between stars. Morden's massive head turned slightly to watch Thomas work. You still do not understand what I am, do you? Thomas paused in his cleaning. Over the past 3 days he had heard fragments of Morden's story, but much of it seemed impossible to believe. You said you're the last of your kind, that you used to rule star systems. Stellar drakes are not native to any single world. We are born in the hearts of dying stars, emerging when a star collapses into a black hole. The cosmic forces that create us also grant us immortality and power over fundamental forces of the universe. Morden's voice carried pride mixed with deep sadness. We were the first spacefaring species, traveling between galaxies when your world was still cooling from its formation. Thomas sat back on his heels trying to process this information. If you're so powerful, how did these parasites hurt you? The hegemony empire has existed for millions of years. They have conquered thousands of galaxies by harvesting the life essence of other species. Their rulers are immortal, like the stellar drakes, but their immortality comes from consuming others. Morden's eye darkened with ancient anger. They developed quantum parasites specifically to torture my kind. The parasites cannot kill us, but they can drain our power slowly while keeping us in constant agony. Why would they do that instead of just killing you? Because a dead stellar drake's power dissipates back into the cosmic void. A suffering stellar drake can be milked of that power for eternity. The dragon's voice grew bitter. I watched my brothers and sisters captured one by one. Some were chained to power the hegemony's war machines. Others were used as living batteries for their immortal rulers. I was the only one who escaped. Thomas felt sick. The idea of creatures being tortured for eternity to power an empire was beyond horrible. How did you get away? I fled during the final battle for the Drake homeworld. My people fought bravely, but we had grown complacent in our immortality. We had forgotten that there are some fates worse than death. Morden was quiet for a long moment. I have spent decades running, hiding, watching the parasites slowly consume me from within. That is when I learned about humanity. What did you learn? That humans are the only species capable of permanently ending a stellar drake's existence. Other species can wound us, even cause great pain, but we always regenerate eventually. When a human kills a stellar drake with true intent, something different happens. Our connection to the cosmic forces that grant immortality is severed permanently. Thomas frowned as he applied fresh antiseptic to another wound. How is that possible? Humans aren't special. We're not even the most advanced species on our own planet. But you are special, though you do not realize it. Every other species in the galaxy has evolved limitations that prevent them from truly ending immortal life. It is a safeguard built into the very fabric of existence. But humanity emerged differently. Your species developed without those cosmic restraints. I still don't understand. Morden lifted his great head slightly, studying Thomas with that star-filled eye. Tell me, human, when you look at me in pain, what do you feel? Thomas didn't need to think about the answer. I want to help you feel better. And if I were evil? If I had done terrible things? I would still want to stop your suffering even if I had to stop you from hurting others. Exactly. Humans feel empathy for all living things, even enemies. But you also have the strength to end suffering when necessary, even if it hurts you, to do so. This combination is unique in the galaxy. It is why humans can grant true death to immortals while others cannot. Thomas finished cleaning the last visible wound and sat back. The dragon did look better than when he first found him. The scales had regained some of their luster, and Morden could lift his head without obvious pain. The parasites are weakening, Morden observed. Your care has slowed their spread significantly. I have not felt this well in decades. Good. Maybe we can find a way to get rid of them completely. Human. Thomas. It was the first time Morden had used his name. There is something you must know. The hegemony has ways of tracking quantum parasites. They use them not just as weapons, but as beacons. By now, they will have detected that I am here. Thomas felt cold dread settle in his stomach. Here? On Earth? Yes. They will come for me. And they will not care about the collateral damage to your people. The hegemony views humans as a threat because of your death touch ability. They have, likely plan to eliminate your species eventually. How long do we have? Their fastest ships could reach this system within days. Perhaps a week at most. Morden's voice was grim. I am sorry, Thomas. By helping me, you may have doomed your world. Thomas stood up slowly, his mind racing. Everything had just changed. This wasn't just about one suffering alien anymore. His entire planet was in danger, and it was partly his fault for not ending Morden's life when first asked. But as he looked down at the ancient creature who was growing stronger thanks to his care, Thomas realized something important. He still couldn't bring himself to regret his choice. If helping someone in pain meant facing consequences, then that was a choice he could live with, even if he might not live with it for very long. The hover truck kicked up dust clouds as it approached Thomas's farm. He recognized the vehicle as belonging to Dr. Emma Santos from the Colonial Research Station 20 miles south. Thomas cursed under his breath as he watched from his kitchen window. He had hoped to keep Morden's presence secret longer, but apparently his frequent trips to town for medical supplies had raised questions. Dr. Santos climbed out of her truck, followed by a stern-looking man in military uniform, whom Thomas didn't recognize. The man carried himself with the rigid posture of career military, and his hand rested casually on the weapon at his hip. Thomas met them at his front door before they could knock. "Emma, what brings you out here?" Dr. Santos was a small woman, with graying hair and intelligent eyes that missed nothing. She had been studying New Eden's ecosystem for over a decade, and Thomas had always respected her work. "Hello, Thomas. This is Captain Robert Hayes from the Colonial Defense Force. We need to talk." Captain Hayes stepped forward. He was younger than Thomas expected for someone with his rank, probably in his early 40s with close-cropped dark hair and suspicious eyes. "Mr. Reed, we've detected unusual energy readings coming from your property, specifically quantum signatures that don't match anything in our databases." Thomas forced himself to remain calm. "I don't know anything about quantum signatures. I'm just a farmer. A farmer who's been buying medical supplies in quantities that would stock a small hospital," Dr. Santos said gently. "And a farmer whose livestock have been agitated for a week, according to your neighbors. Plus, there's the matter of the crater in your backfield," Captain Hayes added. "Satellite imagery shows a perfectly circular depression that appeared 6 days ago. We need to investigate." Thomas realized he had no choice. If he tried to deny everything, they would simply search his property anyway. "Before I show you anything, I need you both to promise me something." Captain Hayes's expression hardened. "Civilians don't make demands of military personnel, Mr. Reed." "Robert, please," Dr. Santos intervened. "Thomas, what do you need? Promise me you'll listen to the whole story before you make any decisions. And promise me you won't hurt my guest until you understand the situation." "Guest?" Dr. Santos raised an eyebrow. "What kind of guest requires medical supplies and creates quantum signatures?" Thomas sighed deeply. "The kind that's been running from an enemy that wants to destroy humanity." Captain Hayes's hand moved closer to his weapon. "Explain. Now." Instead of explaining, Thomas led them toward the crater. As they walked through his ruined wheat field, he tried to prepare them for what they were about to see. 6 days ago, something crashed in my field. Something that was badly injured and asked for my help." "Asked?" Dr. Santos looked puzzled. "You mean it communicated with you?" "It speaks directly into your mind. Its name is Morden, and it's the last of something called the Stellar Drakes." Thomas stopped at the crater's edge. "He's down there. Try not to shoot first and ask questions later." Captain Hayes drew his weapon as he peered into the crater. Dr. Santos gasped and nearly fell backward when she saw Morden resting at the bottom. The dragon had grown stronger over the past week, and his scales now shimmered with health despite the remaining patches of quantum parasites. "Dear God," Dr. Santos whispered. "It's magnificent." "It's a threat," Captain Hayes snapped, raising his weapon. "Stand back, both of you." "Wait." Thomas stepped between the captain and the crater. "He's not dangerous. He's been nothing but cooperative." Morden's great eye opened, focusing on the newcomers. Thomas felt the dragon's mental voice, though he couldn't tell if the others could hear it too. "More humans, interesting. One carries the scent of knowledge and curiosity, the other reeks of fear and violence." Dr. Santos staggered slightly. "Did you all hear that? It spoke in my head." Captain Hayes kept his weapon trained on Morden but answered tersely. "I heard it, some kind of telepathic ability. I am Morden, last of the Stellar Drakes. Thomas Reed has shown me kindness when he could have ended my suffering. I mean no harm to your species." "Then why are you here?" Captain Hayes demanded. "I fled to this world seeking death. Only humans can grant true death to beings like myself. But Thomas chose compassion over compliance with my wishes. He has tended my wounds and helped me regain strength." Dr. Santos moved closer to the crater's edge, her scientific curiosity overcoming her initial shock. "The energy readings we detected, are they coming from you?" "From the quantum parasites that infest my body. They are weapons created by the hegemony empire to torture immortal beings. The parasites broadcast a signal that allows my enemies to track me. Captain Hayes lowered his weapon slightly. Enemies? What enemies? Thomas decided it was time to share everything Morden had told him. The hegemony empire. They've been conquering galaxies for millions of years. They use the life force of other species to power their immortal rulers. Morden escaped from them, but they've been hunting him. And now they're coming here, Dr. Santos said, understanding immediately. Because the parasites are broadcasting his location. Yes. They will arrive within days. When they come, they will not distinguish between Morden and the humans who harbor him. The hegemony views humanity as a threat because we possess the ability to permanently kill immortal beings. Captain Hayes holstered his weapon but remained tense. How do we know this isn't some elaborate trap? How do we know you're not the advance? Scout for an invasion? Morden lifted his massive head to look directly at the captain. Because if I wished to harm your world, I would not need deception. Even weakened as I am, I could level this continent with a thought. Stellar drakes do not require subtlety when we choose violence. He's telling the truth, Thomas said. I've been caring for him for a week. If he wanted to hurt people, he's had plenty of opportunities. Dr. Santos approached the crater more closely, her scientific mind working through the implications. You said only humans can permanently kill your species. How is that possible? Your species evolved without the cosmic limitations that constrain others. You have the capacity for both infinite compassion and absolute finality. When a human takes the life of an immortal being with true intent, that immortal's connection to the forces that sustain them is severed permanently. Captain Hayes looked confused. I don't understand. What makes humans special? Your ability to feel empathy for all life, even enemies, while still possessing the strength to end suffering when necessary. This combination is unique in the galaxy. Morden's mental voice carried something like admiration. Most species can do one or the other, but not both with equal conviction. Thomas watched as both Dr. Santos and Captain Hayes processed this information. He could see the moment when they began to truly believe what they were hearing. How many ships are coming? Captain Hayes asked grimly. The hegemony deploys hundreds of vessels for operations they consider important. They will bring enough firepower to sterilize this planet if they encounter resistance. Dr. Santos looked pale. We have to warn Earth Command. Get our defense forces ready. Your military technology will not be effective against hegemony vessels, Morden said gently. However, there may be another way. Thomas felt hope stir in his chest. What do you mean? The quantum parasites are the key. If they can be removed, I will regain my full power. A healthy stellar drake is more than a match for a hegemony fleet. But the removal process is dangerous and can only be performed by a human. Captain Hayes stepped forward. What kind of danger? The human who removes the parasites will absorb them temporarily. Most beings would die instantly from such exposure. But humans might survive. And in surviving, they might gain access to cosmic forces beyond imagination. Thomas felt everyone looking at him. He was the one who had been caring for Morden. He was the obvious choice. There has to be another way, Dr. Santos said quickly. We can't ask Thomas to sacrifice himself. I am not asking, Morden replied. I am simply explaining the options available. The choice belongs to him. Thomas stared down at the ancient creature, who had become something like a friend over the past week. Earth was in danger because he had chosen compassion over convenience. Now he might have to choose sacrifice over safety. The weight of the decision settled on his shoulders like a mountain. The emergency meeting in New Eden's Colonial Administration building felt surreal to Thomas. 3 hours ago, he had been a simple farmer. Now he sat at a table with the planet's governor, the head of colonial defense, and representatives from Earth Command, who had arrived via emergency hyperspace transmission. Governor Patricia Walsh was a practical woman in her 60s who had governed New Eden for 15 years. She listened to Dr. Santos's report with the same expression she used. For reviewing crop reports, though, Thomas noticed her hands trembling slightly as she gripped her coffee cup. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, she said finally. We have an alien dragon in Thomas Reed's wheat field. This dragon is being hunted by a galactic empire that conquers worlds and harvests life force from other species. And they're coming here within the next few days? That's correct, Dr. Santos confirmed. General Morrison from Earth Command appeared on the holographic display, his weathered face grim. Our deep space sensors have detected unusual hyperspace disturbances at the edge of the system. Something big is coming, and it'll be here in approximately 18 hours. Thomas felt his stomach drop. 18 hours was much sooner than Morden had estimated. What are our options? Governor Walsh asked. Captain Hayes leaned forward. Earth, Command is scrambling the 7th Fleet, but they won't arrive for at least 3 days. We have the Colonial Defense Grid and 12 patrol ships, but according to our guest, that won't be enough. The Dragon could fight them if the parasites were removed, Dr. Santos added. But the process would require a human volunteer, and the survival chances are unknown. All eyes turned to Thomas. He had been dreading this moment since the meeting began. Morden explained the process to me. The parasites have to be absorbed by someone else before they can be destroyed. The person who does it will either die immediately or gain access to cosmic forces that could help fight the hegemony. It's suicide, Captain Hayes said bluntly. We can't ask a civilian to sacrifice himself on the word of an alien creature we've known for less than a day. We may not have a choice, General Morrison's voice crackled through the hologram. Intelligence reports suggest the hegemony has eliminated entire star systems that posed a threat to them. If they consider humanity dangerous enough to hunt, they won't negotiate. Thomas's communicator buzzed with an urgent message. His heart sank as he read it. There's another problem. The quantum parasites are getting stronger. Morden says they're responding to the approaching hegemony fleet by increasing their broadcast power. He's in more pain than he's been since I found him. Dr. Santos checked her tablet. The energy readings from your farm have tripled in the past hour. If this continues, the parasites might kill him before the fleet arrives. Which would solve our immediate problem, Captain Hayes pointed out grimly. No, it wouldn't, Thomas replied. Morden told me something else. He's not just any stellar drake. He's the keeper of something called the Void Flame. The room went silent. General Morrison leaned closer to his camera. Explain. The Void Flame is a cosmic force that can either destroy entire galaxies or transform them. Stellar drakes were created to guard it, to make sure it's only used when absolutely necessary. Morden is the last keeper. And the hegemony wants this Void Flame? Governor Walsh asked. They want to extract it from him. That's why they've been torturing him instead of killing him. If they get the Void Flame, they become unstoppable across multiple galaxies. Dr. Santos looked horrified. So if we do nothing, Morden dies, the hegemony gets ultimate power, and then they destroy humanity anyway? That appears to be the situation, Thomas confirmed. General Morrison's expression hardened. Then we don't have a choice. Someone has to attempt the parasite removal. I'll do it, Thomas said quietly. Thomas, no. Dr. Santos reached across the table to grab his arm. We don't know what will happen to you. We know what will happen if I don't try. Everyone on Earth dies, and the hegemony becomes unstoppable. Thomas gently pulled his arm free. Besides, Morden thinks humans are special. Maybe that specialness will help me survive. Captain Hayes stood up abruptly. This is insane. We're making decisions based on the word of an alien that crashed on our planet 6 days ago. Do you have a better plan? Thomas asked. Before Captain Hayes could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the building. General Morrison's image flickered as he received reports from his staff. Multiple hyperspace signatures detected. The hegemony fleet is arriving ahead of schedule. Through the building's windows, they could see streaks of light appearing in the daytime sky. The streaks resolved into massive crystalline ships, each one larger than New Eden's largest city. Thomas counted at least 50 vessels before he stopped trying. Dear God, Governor Walsh whispered. How are we supposed to fight that? The largest of the hegemony ships positioned itself directly over New Eden's capital. A beam of energy lanced down from the ship, striking the Colonial Defense Headquarters. The building simply vanished, leaving nothing but a perfectly smooth crater where it had stood. Thomas's communicator buzzed with an emergency transmission. The voice that came through was cold and mechanical, translated by some kind of universal system. Inhabitants of the third planet, I am Archon Voltar of the Hegemony. You harbor a criminal who has stolen property belonging to the Empire. Surrender the creature known as Morden immediately, or face the consequences. Governor Walsh grabbed her emergency communicator. This is Governor Walsh. We're willing to negotiate. There will be no negotiation. You have 1 hour to produce the fugitive. For every hour of delay, we will destroy one of your settlements. The transmission ended. Through the windows, they could see another energy beam lance down from a different ship. In the distance, a column of smoke rose from what had been the mining settlement of Creek Falls. They just killed 300 people, Captain Hayes said, his voice tight with rage. And they'll keep killing until we give them Morden, Dr. Santos added. Thomas stood up from the table. Then I'd better get back to my farm. If I'm going. To try this parasite removal, I need to do it now. Thomas, wait, Governor Walsh called after him. Even if you succeed, how do we know this void flame will be enough to stop them? Thomas paused at the door. We don't. But doing nothing guarantees everyone dies. At least this way, some of us might survive. As he left the building, Thomas could see the hegemony ships spreading out across the sky like predatory birds. Another energy beam struck the coastal city of Harbor Point, erasing it from existence in seconds. The ride back to his farm felt like it took forever, even though his truck's accelerator was pressed to the floor. Behind him, New Eden's sky filled with the alien ships of humanity's first galactic enemy. When Thomas reached the crater, he found Morden writhing in agony. The quantum parasites had spread across most of his body, pulsing with malevolent energy. The dragon's mental voice was weak when it reached Thomas's mind. The parasites grow stronger as the fleet approaches. They are preparing to transfer me to the hegemony ships. Not if I can help it, Thomas said, climbing down into the crater. Tell me exactly what I need to do. Even in pain, Morden's ancient eye showed something like hope. Place your hands on the largest concentration of parasites. Focus on drawing them into yourself. If you survive the initial absorption, you must channel the void flame through them to destroy the parasites completely. Thomas looked at the writhing mass of black substance covering Morden's chest. It looked like living tar mixed with liquid, hate. And if I don't survive? Then humanity's first contact with the greater galaxy will also be its last. Another energy beam lit up the sky behind them, followed by the distant sound of destruction. Thomas Reed, wheat farmer and reluctant hero, placed his hands on the quantum parasites and prepared to save the world. The moment Thomas's hands touched the quantum parasites, agony beyond description flooded through his body. It felt like being struck by lightning while drowning in acid, every nerve-ending screaming as the alien entities burrowed into his flesh. He wanted to pull his hands away, wanted to run, wanted to do anything except continue absorbing the malevolent creatures that had tortured Morden for decades. But Thomas Reed was a farmer, and farmers knew about enduring pain for the greater good. He had delivered calves in freezing rain, worked through back injuries during harvest season, and watched crops fail while still planning for next year. This was just another kind of suffering to endure. The parasites flowed into him like living darkness, carrying with them fragments of malicious intelligence. Thomas could feel them trying to take control of his mind, whispering promises of power and threats of eternal torment. But where other species might have been overwhelmed, Thomas's human stubbornness kicked in. He had made a choice to help, and no amount of pain would make him abandon that choice. Focus on the void flame. Morden's mental voice urged him. Draw upon the cosmic force within me. Use it to burn away the parasites before they can establish control. Thomas felt something vast and ancient stirring within the dragon. It was like standing next to a furnace that could melt stars, a power so immense it made the parasites seem like gnats by comparison. He reached for that power, not to control it, but to channel it through his own body. What happened next changed everything. Instead of being consumed by the cosmic force, Thomas felt it recognize something familiar within him. The void flame had been created by the universe itself to maintain balance, to ensure that no single force could dominate all existence. It required guardians who could wield ultimate power without being corrupted by it. Stellar drakes had served as those guardians for eons because they were immortal and wise, but they had one fatal flaw. Their immortality had made them distant from the value of individual life. They saw existence in terms of cosmic cycles and universal balance, not in terms of personal connections and individual suffering. Humans were different. Thomas felt the void flame respond to his capacity for both infinite compassion and absolute resolve. Where Morden saw the destruction of the hegemony as necessary for cosmic balance, Thomas saw it as necessary to protect the people he cared about. The difference was subtle but profound, and the void flame recognized it immediately. The cosmic force flowed through Thomas, using his human nature to transform itself. Instead of the cold, universal power that stellar drakes wielded, the void flame became something warmer, more personal, more connected to life itself. It burned through the quantum parasites like sunlight through shadow, not just destroying them but transforming their malevolent energy into something that could heal rather than harm. Thomas felt the parasites die within him, their screams of rage becoming whispers of peace as they were purified by the transformed void flame. The pain in his body faded, replaced by a sense of completeness he had never experienced before. He was still Thomas Reed, wheat farmer from New Eden, but he was also something more. Morden's massive form shuddered as the last of the parasites were drawn from his body. The dragon's scales brightened to their full magnificence, shifting through colors that had no names in any human language. For the first time in decades, Mordoun was free of pain. Impossible, the dragon whispered into Thomas's mind. You have not just absorbed the parasites, you have transformed the void flame itself. How? Thomas stood up slowly, feeling power flowing through him like electricity through copper wire. But unlike raw cosmic force, this power felt natural, as much a part of him as his own heartbeat. I don't know, I just did what felt right. Above them, the hegemony fleet had finished positioning itself over New Eden's major population centers. Archon Voltar's voice echoed across the planet through emergency broadcast systems. Your time has expired. We will now demonstrate the cost of defying the hegemony. Energy beams lanced down from a dozen ships simultaneously. The city of Port Landing, home to 50,000 people, vanished in an instant. Then New Valley, then Highland Settlement. Each beam left nothing but perfectly smooth craters where communities had existed moments before. Thomas felt each death like a physical blow, but instead of overwhelming him with grief, the sensation focused his resolve. These were his people, his world, and no cosmic empire had the right to destroy them. Can you stop them? Mordoun asked. Thomas looked up at the crystalline ships filling the sky. With his transformed vision, he could see the life force flowing through them, stolen from countless species and used to power hegemony technology. He could also see the fear of the beings controlling the ships. They had expected to find a single, wounded stellar drake, not a human guardian wielding transformed cosmic power. I think so, Thomas said, but not the way you might expect. He reached out with his new abilities not to destroy the hegemony fleet, but to speak directly to every consciousness within it. His voice, amplified by the void flame, reached across space to touch the minds of hegemony soldiers, workers, and even their immortal rulers. I am Thomas Reed, guardian of the void flame and protector of humanity. You have come to my world seeking to harvest power and destroy life, but I offer you something your empire has never encountered before. Archon Voltar's response came immediately, broadcast across all frequencies. Human creature, you possess stolen power. Return what belongs to the hegemony, and your death will be swift. I offer you redemption, Thomas continued, ignoring the Archon's threats. For millions of years your empire has survived by consuming others. You have forgotten what it means to create, to nurture, to grow through cooperation rather than conquest. The void flame shows me your history, Voltar. I know that your people were once victims themselves, consumed by an even older empire. You became what you feared most. Thomas felt something stir within the hegemony fleet. Soldiers who had not thought about their origins in millennia began to remember. Commanders who had spent eons following orders without question began to doubt. Even some of the immortal rulers started to recall what they had lost in their endless pursuit of power. But it doesn't have to continue, Thomas said. The cycle of consumption and conquest can end with you. The void flame doesn't just have the power to destroy. It can transform, it can heal, it can teach you to survive through creation instead of destruction. Archon Voltar's response was furious. Enough. We did not come here for philosophy lessons from a primitive species. All ships, focus fire on the human creature. Destroy him and retrieve the void flame. Every weapon in the hegemony fleet turned toward Thomas's location. Energy beams that could melt continents converged on the crater where he stood. But instead of trying to shield himself, Thomas opened himself completely to the attack, allowing the weapons to strike him directly. The beams passed through him harmlessly, their destructive energy absorbed and transformed by the void flame within him. Where the hegemony expected to see annihilation, they saw Thomas Reed standing unharmed, glowing with gentle light that somehow made their advanced weapons seem crude and primitive. Your weapons cannot harm me because they are powered by suffering, Thomas explained. The void flame I carry is powered by compassion. They are incompatible forces. But Thomas wasn't finished. Instead of using his power to strike back at the fleet, he began to sing. It was an old song his grandmother had taught him, a simple melody about growing things and caring for them. As his voice rose, carried by the void flame across space itself, something extraordinary happened. The stolen life force powering the hegemony ships began to respond to the song. Across the fleet, the consciousness of countless harvested species stirred to life. They had not been destroyed when their bodies died. They had been trapped within hegemony technology, used as living batteries for an empire built on death. Now Thomas's song gave them voice again. The hegemony fleet found itself filled with the angry, sorrowful, hopeful voices of every species they had ever conquered. Millions of dead civilizations spoke as one, demanding justice, demanding change, demanding an end to the cycle of consumption. Archon Voltar tried to maintain control, but his immortal consciousness was overwhelmed by the voices of his victims. Across the fleet, hegemony soldiers laid down their weapons as they heard the stories of worlds they had destroyed, people they had enslaved, cultures they had extinguished. Thomas felt the moment when the fleet's collective will shifted from conquest to contrition. It was like watching a fever break or a storm pass. The hegemony had come to harvest Earth's life force and claim the void flame. Instead, they found themselves transformed by contact with humanity's fundamental nature. What happens now? Morden asked, his ancient voice filled with wonder. Thomas looked up at the fleet, seeing not enemies but broken beings who needed healing. Now we teach them what my grandmother taught me, that the best way to survive is to help others grow. The transformation of the hegemony empire began that day above New Eden. It would take years to complete, as Thomas worked with reformed hegemony, leaders to establish new colonies based on cooperation instead of conquest. Worlds that had been strip-mined for resources became gardens. Species that had been enslaved became teachers, sharing their knowledge freely with former oppressors who had learned humility. Morden chose to remain on Earth, serving as Thomas's advisor and friend. The last stellar Drake found purpose in helping humanity prepare for their new role as gardeners of the galaxy. Other species, drawn by stories of the humans who had transformed an empire through compassion, came seeking alliance rather than conquest. Thomas Reed never stopped being a wheat farmer. Even as he traveled the galaxy establishing new worlds and healing old wounds, he always returned to his fields on New Eden. The crater where he had first found Morden became a symbol of hope across the galaxy, a reminder that sometimes the greatest strength comes from choosing to help rather than to harm. And in the cosmic forces that bind the universe together, the void flame burned brighter than ever before, its light powered not by the cold mathematics of universal balance, but by the warm certainty that every life has value and every being deserves a chance to grow.